for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. I want to talk about the Misogi today, something we talked about quite a long time ago. You may not remember, you may have missed that episode. So, we're going to talk about Misogi. You heard that right. Misogi, Misogi. What is Misogi? What the heck is this? Misogi is a challenging, oftentimes transformative experience that you choose, and it's designed to push you to your limits or beyond, physically push you to your perceived limits. It's inspired by some ancient Japanese purification ritual, but it's been modernized or talked about a lot more, popularized by Jesse Itzler, by Michael Easter, who wrote The Comfort Crisis. What it really does is center on a single, extraordinarily difficult task that's both mentally and physically demanding. The goal is not necessarily to succeed in the conventional sense, but the objective is to grow through the attempt of the Misogi. Okay, so let me walk this back a little bit. Some of you may be like, "All right, I'm out. Hold on, pump the brakes. You're not out just yet. Stick with me." So I know exactly what I'm doing in 2025 for my Misogi. It is something that is absolutely going to push me to my limits. It is likely to potentially break me. I certainly will not die. I cannot die, but I have a very, very high chance at failure. These are some of the rules of Misogi. Now, why in the heck would I do this? Why would I push myself to that limit? I do it because I have found, as many of you have probably found, that when you push yourself to the brink in anything, to the point of, thinking in your head, maybe I ought to quit, maybe I should tap out. When you push yourself to that limit, you learn an awful lot about yourself. When you push yourself physically or push yourself mentally, when you're doing this single, extraordinarily difficult task, you you find yourself in a headspace that maybe you haven't been before. And I have personally experienced what I believe to be growth or change as a direct result of this. And I want more of it. Now, I do, different events. I was just talking yesterday about some endurance events and things like that in yesterday's podcast episode. So yeah, I'm trained to do some of this, but it doesn't matter where you're at right now physically. You can choose your own hard. You don't have to go do what I'm doing or what anybody else is doing. Now you're like, Brian, why haven't you just told me what it is you're doing? One of the rules of Misogi is you don't talk about Misogi. You don't share necessarily what you're doing because you're doing it for you. You're holding yourself or pushing yourself. You're not seeking external validation or external accountability. So ideally, not many people or anybody knows about it but you. Now, certainly a few people in my world know because they have to play a role in me preparing for it, but not many will know. And I'm likely not talking about it. Now, some of the core principles of Misogi. As I mentioned, it's got to be extremely challenging. It should push you to a place where failure is genuinely a possibility. Number two, it needs to be growth oriented. The task, again, is much less about accomplishment and it's more about personal growth and transformation. Number three, it's got to be simple and it's got to have focus. One significant challenge, something that may not have any spectators or any external rewards whatsoever. Why the heck would you do this? I've mentioned a couple reasons why I do it, but just generally speaking, why would you do it? Mental growth. You have to confront and overcome self doubt. You've got to be resilient. You've got to develop mental toughness. I think another benefit is you're testing your body's limits. Again, it doesn't matter where you're at, you're going to test yourself and you're likely to get prepared for whatever it is you're going to do. So you're going to get healthier along the way. I also think that a benefit of Misogi, it shifts your perspective on certain things. I think achieving or even attempting something extreme like I'm describing can redefine for you what's possible. It could lead to a confidence boost, overcoming fear, overcoming adversity, maybe some more self belief as a result, maybe more courage as a result. Lastly, at least for me, in the previous years I've been doing this, I think it creates some stories, some memories, and they start to kind of define who you are and how you face life's challenges. So if you're still with me and you're trying to figure out now, okay, how do I choose a Misogi for myself? How do I pick out a Misogi for myself? I'm going to give you a couple things to think around. Number one, set some really big goals. When I said that there's a chance of failure for me, and this is coming from Michael Easter, who really helped me better understand Misogi, you got to pick something that has at least a 50% chance of failure. You also should ideally pick something that aligns with your passions, something that would excite you, something that you could do that is going to test physical endurance and is going to test your mental fortitude, but you should kind of be passionate about it too. You also, could benefit by selecting something unfamiliar. So you don't have to rely on past or expertise or so you can avoid it altogether, which really just pushes your comfort zone. Lastly, I think you got to keep it meaningful. And again, I mentioned limiting your audience. Now, Jesse Itzler, who's pretty well known for publicizing or popularizing Misogi, Jesse's run a 100-mile ultra marathon with no real training. That was a Misogi for him. Michael Easter. He lived 33 days in extreme conditions in Alaska. That was something that was a Misogi for him. It was the isolation, the survival. David Goggins, I don't know, knocked out thousands of pull-ups in a certain amount of time to set a world record. Diana Nyad, her, I don't know if she defined it as Misogi, but she would go on extremely long swims. I mean, she swam 110 miles from Cuba to Florida at the age of 64. Colin O'Brady, a friend of No Days Off, walks solo, unsupported across Antarctica. These are some extreme versions of well-known people, but people in my world, many are listening to No Days Off right now, chose the 29:29 event last year as their personal Misogi. Good friend of mine, Grant, walked across the state of Texas as his Misogi. A number of friends of mine in the Metrics Mastermind world uh, went on the 12-hour walk where you just walk out your front door and just go for 12 straight hours with no phone, all by yourself. Yes, there was mental and physical endurance there. So it doesn't matter your fitness level. Obviously, be safe. Rule number two is you can't die. Rule number one, got to have a chance of failure. Rule number two, you can't die. But you will learn so much about yourself when you push yourself to that kind of level. So, some ideas maybe to get your mind working. Maybe it's biking across a long distance or even your state. Maybe it's swimming across a large body of water. Maybe it's some long, 30K, 50K, 100K trail run on maybe a trail you've never run before. Maybe it's doing 1,000 push-ups in a day. Maybe it's walking 100 miles in 48 hours. Maybe it's climbing some peak that's beyond your typical experience or level of experience, I should say. Something you got to work outside of your comfort zone. Maybe it's some sort of solo adventure, maybe in the wilderness where you got to spend a few days alone in nature without, the modern conveniences. Or maybe you just select a new skill that you've got to master in 30 days, and that's your Misogi, something highly challenging. There's so many different things you could do. The bottom line is you've got to pick something that makes you work harder than you've had to work in a long time, physically and mentally. And as a result, you'll learn a ton about yourself. So choosing your 2025 Misogi, it should be deeply personal. It should stretch your limits in every possible way. Think about maybe what you fear or what you avoid, where you want to grow, and how you can create an experience that changes your perspective on what's possible. On that note, give it some thought. Year's almost over for us. It would be awesome for you to define what your 2025 Misogi is going to be. I would tell you to share it with me, but remember, Ideally, you're trying to keep it to yourself or to a small group. That's all I have for you today. The No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.